officially flatlined and died. I was clinically dead. And I was only dead for 6.5 minutes on this side of the veil. The second one impacted my brainstem directly, and I was dead before I hit the floor. Both cases, it was a very, sudden death, but I was only dead for 6.5 minutes the first time, 7.5 minutes the second time. But what I experienced on the other side was 11 total years between the two.
How do you know how much time it was, or is that just an estimate?
It's an estimate.
Okay.
I mean, just based on everything that I saw, I spent the equivalent of about 5 years in the second one just exploring the galaxy. I spent another 5 years split between learning about the future of humanity, which is really detailed and involved. I had no idea why this stuff was happening. I never thought to ask the first time, but the second time I asked. I was like, I need to know. And my guide, I remember his fate, and I remember his words specifically to this day. He said, we can show you the why, but it will not be a pleasant experience for you. From age 7 to 16, I was bullied every single school day. I sustained a major lower spine injury, 15 severe brain injuries from concussions and skull fractures, multiple broken bones, stab wound. I mean, the whole run. Top of that, I went through 15 years of familial abuse from my mother, and then more from my brother, both of whom were unacknowledged and untreated manic depressives and were volatile and violent.
What do you believe the reason for that is?
Well, I know what the reason is now. He basically made it very clear that the reason why what I've been doing wasn't working is because he said, you're not thinking about the people that you harm. You're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, I want to end my pain. I want to make myself feel better. And as long as you're thinking selfishly, your plans are not going to work.
Yeah.
He said, you have to live it differently. And I asked him, what do I need to do? He said, you need to live what's called.
This week on Beyond Numerology, I'm sitting down with Andrew Bauer. This is part 1 of a 2-part conversation, and it's one that's truly fascinating. Andrew has had not 1, but 2 near-death experiences. The first at just 7 years old, and the second at 14. And what he experienced on the other side wasn't just moments, it was years. In this first episode, we go into both of those experiences, what led up to them, what he saw, and how they completely shifted the direction of his life. We also talk about the reality he was living in before and in between those moments, the abuse, the bullying, the trauma, and how all of it connects to what he later came to understand through his life review. We get into his relationship with his spirit guide, how his past lives influenced this one, and the deeper meaning behind experiences like this. There are parts of this conversation that feel almost impossible to explain, and somehow when he does, they all make sense. This one feels like someone telling you things you already know, but you have somehow forgotten. This is a good one. So without making you wait any longer, let's get into part 1. Welcome to Beyond Numerology. I'm Tammy Lopresti, the creator of Cosmic Ascended Numerology, a rare and super accurate way of decoding who you are and why you're here. If you're new around here, I'm so glad you found us. And if you've been in my world for a while, then you already know that I don't do numerology like everyone else. Think of this podcast as your weekly spiritual hangout, a place where we dive into your soul's plan, uncover what you came here to learn, understand, and experience, and help you wake back up to the you that you came here to be. Every Friday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, we record new episodes on Zoom and invite a live audience to hang out with us. This is your chance to be in the room while we chat with our guest of the week, do mini numerology readings, and enjoy occasional psychic insights from our guests. Whether it's card pulls, spirit guide messages, messages from loved ones on the other side, or other surprises that they might bring. Want the VIP experience? Stick around for the after show where you can hang out with me and the guest of the week to answer your own questions and get a behind the scenes look at the magic happening live. It's always fresh, always different, and always a good time. So whether you're tuning in live or catching the replay, welcome. I'm so happy you're here, and I have a feeling you're going to love it. Now let's go beyond numerology, because your soul's plan starts right now. Hi everyone, I am here today with Andrew Bauer. He has very interesting stories. He's had 2 near-death experiences, right? Right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so can you tell us about how that all started and how it changed your life maybe?
Whew, that's a loaded question.
Yes.
Okay, so I had them when I was relatively young. The first one was at age 7 in
Okay.
1978 for me, and the second one was in 1985 when I was 14. So basically the sevens, if you want to think of it
Okay.
that way.
Yeah. And
And
I'll just note that your chart actually has a lot of 7 energy in it as well. So that makes sense. And that's what stood out to me when I first looked at your chart was the 7.
interesting.
So yeah, so you definitely have a theme of the 7, which is a very good number, and we will talk about that, I promise.
Cool. Oh, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that.
So you had a near-death experience when you were 7. Tell me
Hmm.
what happened that led up to this, and then tell
Yeah.
me like kind of where you went in this experience.
Okay. So the first one was caused by a severe virus that affected
Okay.
a lot of kids under the age of 16 in my hometown as well as the surrounding area. Now you're talking about Western Massachusetts. The town I grew up in was right on the New York border. It's called Pittsfield. So
Okay.
anyone who lives in that area of Massachusetts
Say,
or New York,
hey,
they're familiar with it.
Pittsfield, right?
Yeah, exactly. Shout out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was this area of like Eastern New York State and Western Massachusetts that it was like I think 5 or 6 dozen kids that were
Okay.
affected by it overall. About half of them got the milder version, including my brother. So they were in and out of the hospital within 48 hours or less.
Okay.
So he was home very quickly. Me, I got the worst version.
Okay.
And for those who end up in the hospital longer than 48 hours, uh, it got to the point where we ended up going, several of us went into comas of varying lengths, anywhere from a few days to up to 3 weeks.
Wow.
And during the comas, um, 5 of us died
Interesting.
because what happened, we ended up getting what's called septicemia, which then translated into septic shock. And at that point, you have organs shut down. And it got to the point where 5 days into my coma, the only organs that were still functional were my brain, heart, and lungs, the basic
Wow.
three.
Yeah. Yeah.
And within an hour, the lungs and heart both shut down together. And then right behind them, the brain shut down, and they basically everything was flatlined. And
Wow.
that's when the NDE started.
Wow.
Um,
And this was at 7 years old.
this is
Interesting.
7.
And
So
do
I
you know what the virus was called?
have no idea. They never, to my knowledge, they never identified it. At least not while
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
involved with it. No, it's okay.
So you were 7,
Um,
you had a virus, you went into a coma,
yeah,
and
went to so like
okay.
within 4 days I was in a coma. 5 days into the coma, so you're talking about 9 days total of being in the hospital is when
Yeah.
I officially flatlined and died. I was clinically dead,
Interesting.
and I was only dead for 6.5 minutes on this side of the veil. But
Hmm.
what I experienced on the other side was about a year's worth of memories and experiences, and
Amazing.
I'm just amazing what I saw. But I was only dead for 6.5 minutes the first time, 7.5 minutes the second time. But what I experienced on
Wow.
the other side was 11 total years between the two.
That's Amazing. So, how do you know how much time it was, or is that just an estimate? Like, I'm just
It's an estimate. I
wondering.
mean, just based on everything that I saw, everything that I
Okay.
did, because I spent the equivalent of about 5 years. And the second one just exploring the galaxy. I spent another 5 years split between learning about the future of humanity, which is really detailed and involved,
Well,
and
we
then
need to
also how
talk
the
about that.
universe works. Yeah,
We need to talk about all of this. Okay.
yeah. So it's a lot, just a lot involved.
Okay.
I mean, if you think about it, I was only dead 6.5 minutes the first time.
Hmm.
Just the acclimation part of the NDE where I was fully crossed over, laying in an area that looked like a room made out of energy,
Hmm.
and just the time of like questioning what's going on, where am I, am I okay, all the questions and answers. That alone felt like a half hour or an hour, and I was only
Yeah.
dead for 6.5 minutes. So even right there,
Yeah.
it's longer than I was actually dead. You
I,
know,
I agree. I don't know how long I actually passed away, but it was like it felt like a much, much longer time. And I know that. I feel like I did so much in that time. And when I came back, it was like an instant.
right?
I have no idea how much time it actually was because mine was not recorded like that. I was in my bed. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I know
But
what you mean.
reacclimating to
Yeah.
being human again
Oh, that was
was
the
for me
hardest
like
thing.
this. Oh God, especially the second time,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you imagine being in a place where you have no limits, where everything's instantaneous, creation, traveling, communications telepathic, um, and then coming back here where everything is completely different. It took me a week
Yeah.
just to figure out why nobody was answering me when I was asking questions because I was trying to ask them telepathically
Oh my
and
goodness,
didn't
I love
realize it.
that. I love that.
And it took me 4 months to figure out, like, to relearn how to eat, drink, sleep, breathe, walk, everything just being
Wow.
human again.
Wow.
And I mean,
Wow.
it was like coming back from a coma, literally.
Yeah. So did this happen in both of them or just the first one or just the second one or
The
what?
first one, the reacclimation phase was a little bit shorter because I wasn't
Hmm.
gone as long for me. But the second time was definitely a lot harder
Yeah.
to readjust
Yeah.
because it felt like I said, coming back
10
from a
years.
decade of being
Yeah.
used to a completely different way of life, and then coming
Yeah.
back to this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so my reacclimation was hard, but in a different way. Mine wasn't like that. I didn't go technically to the other side. I was still in the process of leaving here, and the whole thing happened in the ether almost between here
Kind of
and
like in
there.
between.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so I made the decision to come back before I ever went, so I didn't go all the way to the other side. But then later in life, I had an ex that passed away a few years ago, and he took me on adventures to the other side. And so
Oh,
that
nice.
was a whole crazy thing. So that's why I think I understand some of these things a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, so okay, you were 7. Did you immediately go to the other side? You just found yourself in this place, or something happened to make that happen, like to make that transition?
Yeah. When I first died, where I found myself was actually up in the back corner of the hospital room.
Hmm.
Like at the time, they had those big uh, TVs with the
Yeah.
round, kind of like rounded, CRT screens like back in
Hmm.
the 70s
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And if I was like literally, it was to my left. If I was in my physical body, I could reach out and touch the television. That's
Hmm.
how close I was to it. And
Interesting.
what I was seeing was because immediately after I flatlined, as I found out later from my grandmother who was with me at the time, my
Hmm.
parents were home either working or with my brother alternately.
Hmm.
Um, so what I was seeing was the code blue team came running in, shuffled my grandmother out in the hall to get her out of the way, and there was a specific doctor who was standing at the foot of my bed, and he was basically barking orders at everybody else. I remember that the doctor at the foot of the bed, from my perspective, had a bald spot in the back of his head, and he did this comb over method, like left to right,
Yeah.
where like people would,
Yeah. My dad used to do that, but like on the top. Yeah. I know what
yeah.
you
When I came back
mean.
and had woken up from my coma and everything else, I remember I talked to one of the nurses and I described this doctor and I said, "Do you know who he is?" She went to get this guy and she brought him in and she said, "Is this him?" I said, "Well, I'm not real sure." I said, "Can you bend over?" And
Mhm.
he thought it was kind of a strange request, but he did that. And as soon as he bent over, I
Yeah.
could see the bald spot. And I said, "Yeah,
You're like,
that's
yeah,
you."
that's you. Yeah,
And it
interesting.
was kind of freaky to both of them.
Hmm.
And he said, "How did you?" Because
Yeah,
if you think about it from the perspective I was in laying in the bed, even if I had been wide awake with my eyes open,
yeah,
I couldn't have seen that bald
no,
spot from my perspective because it was
yeah,
on above and behind,
yeah,
his head from my perspective. I couldn't have seen it from
hmm,
except for the perspective I was in.
yeah, of course.
So that freaked the nurse out to the point where she actually requested to be moved to a different clinic until I was back home.
Wow.
Like
Yeah,
she,
because none of
were,
this was acceptable back then, right?
yeah, I mean, NDEs
Yeah,
were just not talked about. They
yeah.
were relegated to the New Age section in the bookstore with,
Where
crystals for
you
healing.
quick put a hood on and you can show your
Yeah,
face.
yeah. Basically,
I
be
bet.
like, "Oh, I'm not
Yeah,
admitted to being
I'm
here."
not here. I'm really looking
Yeah,
at history. Yeah.
yeah. So I was in the back corner of the room, and I remember freaking out a little bit because I wasn't sure what was going on, of course, and I had no idea how I was floating up by the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, "This is me up here. Don't
Hmm.
know how I'm up here, but that's me."
Yes.
So I was in the bed, and
Yes.
I didn't recognize myself. I mean, I was covered with wires and tubes and stuff coming out of everywhere. I was under an oxygen tent, which was very common back then.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
so I had no idea who, and it wasn't until one of the doctor on my left, when they were trying to bring me back, said, "Come on back to us, Andrew. Come on back to us." And as soon as he said my name, it freaked me out. I was like, "Oh my God, that's me." And
Mm,
how am I there? How am I here? What's going
yeah.
on?
Yeah.
And my guide heard me,
Mm,
and that's when I first heard his voice. The second one happened in 14, like I said earlier. That one was because of a bully that was at a camp I was at who knocked me backwards into an A-frame roof inside of what used to be a barn that had been
yeah.
converted into living space and camper sleeping space. And
Wow.
what used to be the loft was where they had the campers sleeping. And
Wow.
he knocked me backward into a 4x4 wood beam that the corner was sticking out, and that
Wow.
impacted my brain stem directly, and I was dead
Wow.
before I hit the floor. I've had times where I've talked to my guide and other beings from the other side, but I this past year has been way like the activity level is ramped up through the roof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like I talk to my guide almost on a daily basis now,
Mm-hmm.
and he's helped me put a lot of things together. And one of the
Yeah.
things that he definitely told me was that these two near-death experiences were planned. Like I thought
Mm-hmm.
they were just random happenings. They were never planned. They were never random. They were
Yeah.
planned out ahead of time because I knew at the time I would need certain things to not only get me on my path in this
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, but to keep
Yeah.
me on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So now when
So,
you say that you talk to your spirit guide, do you hear them? Like,
mhm.
it's a male? You said it was a male, I think, earlier when
Yeah, it's a male.
before we got on.
He's not a human.
Okay.
He's from a planet on the other side of the galaxy from us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not actually able to see the system that his planet is in because of the all the gas and dust and light is in the the core of the galaxy.
Okay.
But yeah, his species is from a planet where the gravity was very low, so they are all about 9 to 10 feet tall, dark
Wow.
bluish gray skin.
Neat.
If you've seen the movie Avatar,
Mm-hmm.
they're a little bit like that as far as like there's no hair, no fur. It's all kind of a
Mm-hmm.
slick skin look, but it's a very darker blue gray. It's not as bright as the characters in that movie were. Um,
Interesting.
and their heads are bigger
Mm-hmm.
than those characters, and their entire center mass, like from their almost their neck down to their waist, is translucent on all the way through. And the being, like each of us is an energy based being
Mm-hmm.
inside of a physical shell.
Yeah.
For them, you can actually see this being, like the light emanates from their body. You can
Wow.
see it.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
neat.
like this bluish white light that emanates
Wow.
from their center mass, and
That's cool.
it's absolutely beautiful to see one of them.
Yeah, that's really cool. So do you
Yeah.
see him and hear him?
I saw him when I was on the other side. I don't see
Mm-hmm.
him any like whenever I'm on this side of the veil, I cannot see him. I
Mm-hmm.
can only hear his telepathic voice.
Yeah.
The way we communicate is like he'll pick up on either questions I'm thinking of or thoughts that I'm having
Mhm.
problems I'm having, and then he'll feed me whatever he thinks I need to know in order to
And
fix something or know
okay.
something.
So when you say his telepathic voice, is that like, does that sound like something? Does that feel like
Mhm.
something? Is that what, how does
It's
that work?
very much. It sounds like an audible, but it sounds um, like if you ever had a hearing test where they put those earphones on your head,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
sounds like there's a beep going in the center of your skull.
Okay.
It's kind of like that, like the voice is
Wow.
in the center of my skull,
Yeah.
and but it's very audible. It's very clear. I've described his voice multiple times as what I call sing-songy. It sounds
Oh.
like some my friend Barbara Gale described it as it sounds like somebody speaking a romance language like French
Hmm.
or Italian,
Interesting.
but it's mixed with like a musical quality, almost like they're
Hmm.
singing and talking at the same time.
Mm. That's
And it's a very ASMR sound to him
that
as far as I can
that
tell.
is really interesting to me because okay, one, my spirit guide finally showed herself to me about 2 years ago now. I wanted to say a year, but it's about 2 years ago now. And she
Uh-huh.
looked like an alien, kind of like, well, totally like an alien, which I did not expect. Okay. And she had like a bigger head, bigger eyes. She was kind of a purple blue color, and she had
Oh,
these like
wow.
spots on her a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and she wasn't like purple, purple, blue, blue. Like it was just it was kind of a grayish, like purple
Yeah.
blue
But it
color.
had
Okay.
like a almost purple highlights to it.
Yes.
Like a purplish
And
gray color.
yeah. And anyway, so I finally heard her voice while I was having a QHHT session a couple of years ago, and because she spoke through me. And if you listen to the recording, you hear my voice, but when I listen to the recording, I still hear her voice, okay?
Wow,
Because
that's
she spoke
interesting.
through me. Yes.
Yeah, I guess you would because that residual. I have the same.
Um, so when my so when my guide came through me, when she was not coming through me, she was speaking through me during this
Yeah.
hypnosis. I realized I recognized her voice, and I recognized her voice from when I had my near-death experience in my 20s.
Oh, okay.
I used to call it an angel that came for me. I never saw her, I just heard her, and she was right here, and she just kept talking to me, but everything that she said to me sounded like a song. It sounded like the prettiest song I have ever
Yes,
heard in my whole life. And I
that's
have
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, and I have talked about that for years and years once I finally felt comfortable enough to talk about it. But I always describe it as telepathic because there weren't really words, and there
Mhm.
weren't really sounds actually, but it was the most beautiful song I've ever heard in my life, and it was like the prettiest melody, and it was like her voice was a song. And so when she talked through me in the QHHT session, it was the same thing. It was like I was hearing a song. I wasn't hearing words, but out of my mouth were coming words, and
Nice.
and that's exactly what happened in my
Because what it's
NDE.
like you're the channel, so you're hearing in your head the way she sounds.
Yes.
It really. But
Yes.
what's coming out is her voice translated through your body.
Yes. And the only
That's exactly how
actual
my guide
Yes.
works.
And the only actual difference that happened in me was that my tone and my speech changed. Like I kind of have like a bit of an attitude like added to my the way I am, like my demeanor's more like an attitude style, like I'm always too cool for school. This girl is like really upbeat and happy and joyful and everything. And so when she talks, it's like higher pitched, and it's just like really nice and sweet, and it
So in
reminds
other
me
words,
of like
it doesn't really match you per se, but
it
it's like,
doesn't match my
yeah,
personality.
I didn't
Okay.
see him yet because I'm
Okay.
still on this side of the veil. I can only see him when I
Yeah.
cross.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so
Cool.
I couldn't see him until I crossed the veil because
Okay.
like I was still seeing with human eyes, even though I was out of the body, I
Yep.
was still limited.
Yeah.
And so I heard his voice, that sing-songy voice, and it immediately just calmed me down. I always said if I could record his voice somehow, like I would turn it into the greatest ASMR channel on the planet because
I will
it's
tell
the most
you,
calming thing.
this is why when you said that, I had to interrupt you because that I want to cry almost thinking about it. That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard, felt, touched, experienced. That voice, I would have followed her to the end of time. I didn't care where she
Yeah,
was taking me,
and
and
my guy and I are
that's
the
how
same
I
way.
felt. Yeah, so
Like he and
I
I are more than
totally get
brothers, more than
that.
friends. We're
It,
we're
it's
like
I know
like
it's
it's like
weird, right?
we're brothers slash soulmates. And
Yes.
a lot of people when they hear the word soulmate, they think of romantic soulmate, but soulmate doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
mean
Yeah, of
romantic.
course.
It can
Yeah.
just be two beings who are so close to each other that there is no separation between them.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
everything is, they understand each other automatically, and we've had that experience with that relationship with each other the whole time.
Yeah. Now let me ask you a question. Okay. Now this is
Sure.
kind of a side question. Okay.
Hmm.
So I teach about soulmate or not soulmate. I teach about soulmates too. But no, I teach about spirit guide communication. Okay.
Correct.
Now in my belief system, and this is just a belief system, I don't know that it's true. I wonder if you might know the answer. I teach about how your spirit guide, your main spirit guide is like your partner in this lifetime. And it's like you both signed up for the same mission and they are doing the spiritual side and you are doing the human side, but you're walking together like best friends, like a partnership, and you're both getting all of the same soul growth out of it,
Benefits.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're in it as much as you are. And so I always say that they're spending their entire life with you, trying to get you to remember them and hear them so that they can guide you to your plan because you're veiled, you know. Would you
Yeah.
say that that's true or close to
Absolutely
true? Okay.
100%.
Because that's my understanding.
We were joined at the hip right from the
Yeah.
very beginning. And I
Yeah.
saw in my second near death experience, I had a separate life review. Like, and both of them had a regular one for this particular lifetime,
Yeah.
or what I lived of it at that point, which wasn't much.
Hmm.
But I had a separate one because I asked the question, like, why? Because between the first and the second one, I started to experience things that I was told were coming in the first near death experience, but hadn't started yet, and started 3 months after it.
Now, were these
And
things coming for your own life or for
in
the
my own life,
okay.
stuff like the bullying that I went through,
Okay.
injuries that I sustained, things like, and
Oh,
I was told
interesting.
basically,
Okay.
here's all this stuff's going to happen, right in order, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
I could follow it, but
Yeah.
also because it would show me, okay, this is real, this is something you're not making it up, you're not imagining it,
Hmm.
even when people are questioning it, you have something to fall back on.
Yeah, this is your proof that you can
Yeah.
walk with. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's your proof for you. It's not so
Yeah.
it's not, I can't prove it to somebody else
No,
necessarily,
but this is
but
your marker to
it's
say
my
this
proof.
really happened and this is valid and all of that. I had that as well. They told me what was going to happen next in my life. And
Yeah.
see, for me, I had to decide if I wanted to live or die. And I chose to live, but obviously just
Really, I couldn't have guessed.
you can't tell, right? Um,
Yeah.
but when I chose to live, then she prepared me for what living was going to be and how hard it was going to be to come
Yeah.
back and how everything I had already previously gone through up until that point was very, very hard to get to that point. But she said it's going to get much
100%.
worse before it gets better. So
Yeah. For me, the first from age 7 to 16, I was bullied every single school day. I
that is
sustained a
awful.
major lower spine injury, 15 severe brain injuries from concussions and skull fractures, including the one at the camp that caused my second near-death experience. Multiple broken bones, a stab wound. I mean, the whole run.
Holy crap.
And and then on top of that, I went through 15 years of familial abuse from my mother, and then more from my brother, both of whom were unacknowledged and untreated manic depressives,
Yeah.
and were volatile and violent.
So,
So,
so let me ask you a question about that.
sure.
What do you believe the reason for that is? Do you
Oh, I
believe
know what the reason is now.
okay, that's what I'd
Yeah.
like to know. What is the reason to go through all of
Okay. So, like the first near-death experience, and during the 7 years in between,
that? Mm-hmm.
I
Of
had no idea why this stuff was happening. I knew that it was,
course.
I guess in a way I knew it was coming because I
Yeah.
had that list in my head.
Yes.
But yeah, I still didn't understand the why, and I never thought to ask the first time. But the second time, I asked,
Yeah.
and I was like, I need to know.
Yes.
And my guide, I remember his face. It, I could even from behind. He showed whenever he appeared to me on the other side, he always appeared as his most recent incarnation. He was not one to appear as just an
Oh,
energy-based being. He was very
good.
attached to his previous
Yeah.
incarnation.
Okay.
So he's always appeared as that to me.
Hmm.
And I could see his whole body just kind of slump. And I could tell that something bad was in his, like, I could just feel the vibes off of him. And when he turned around, the sadness on his face was so evident that I almost wish I hadn't asked.
Yeah.
But, he said, and I remember his words specifically to this day. He said, "We can show you the why, but it will not be a pleasant experience for you."
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like, "This is your last warning," kind of thing.
Mm.
And I guess I probably should have seen that as a red flag, but at the same time, I'm one of those people that very much, and I know a lot of people feel the same way, where they believe that knowing something, even when it's really, really bad, is better than not knowing why.
You have that right in your chart. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have that questioning nature that you need to get to the bottom of things to
right,
understand or to
exactly. I need to
accept
know
them.
everything
Yeah.
going on. Like, I can't, like, I can handle almost anything if I know why it's happening, or like
I
something.
I had the same thing going on because I have the same thing in my chart. Okay. So it's like I had this I had this belief system for the longest time. I used to always say, if I understood why somebody would do something, then I could accept that they did something. Okay. And so I would spend my time going, okay, so he did this because it was done to him. And then I would go, okay, so that's why he did it. But then he also did it because, of this other thing. And then he also did it because of this thing and that thing and that thing. And I could never get to the bottom cause of why someone actually hurts another person because I never could understand why would someone hurt someone? I would never do that. And so I spent a lot of time just going, okay, it's this. No, it's this. No, it's this and this. No, it's this, this, and this. Oh, maybe it's this. And I realized at some point I could not locate the bottom of
You,
why
you were
people
basically
do
chasing
things.
down a rabbit hole,
Exactly. I couldn't find the very core
the
reason
root cause.
why someone does something, okay? Because I realized it doesn't matter how it starts. It's always made up of all the things that are involved. That's what I finally landed on is that it doesn't matter why something happens, it matters that something happened. And so I started looking at my abuse and I started looking at the things in my life that I didn't understand that I was always trying to solve. And I started saying, as long as I can accept that this thing happened, not why it happened, because it's not my job to understand why. It's their
Yeah,
job to figure out why they did all the things and heal from them. My job is to understand that it happened. And so that created kind of like a level for me that I could land on or start from,
yeah.
you know? And so
Like something
now
you can hold on to that was yours and yours
this is
alone that no one
tangible
else can
now.
touch.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was like I used to think if I could hold on, if I could find the why and grab it, then that could be my anchor to heal. But it never was, and I could never figure that out. I could never get to the bottom of that to do that. But when I started saying the truth is that this person hurt me, just that doesn't matter why,
yeah,
doesn't matter all the reasons. That
yeah. Because
person
the
hurt
why
me.
won't change that it happened.
Exactly. And so when I did that, that became my anchor for healing because then I started saying that stuff happened and that stuff's over and it doesn't matter.
2 lifetimes ago, I was one of those harmful people. I harmed
Yeah.
a lot of people really badly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I probably understand better than most
Hmm.
why somebody does something like that because
Well,
I was that. But for
me
me,
here.
the
Yeah.
why I needed to know
Yeah.
was not um like why this person was doing this thing to me. It
Yeah.
was why is all of this happening?
Have you discovered that answer? And
Yes.
what is that answer?
So when I had my, like I said, I had my second near-death experience, and my guide told me we can show you, but it will not be a pleasant experience. So they put me right back into the same life. It was like a pod, is what I saw that I was put into to have this life review.
Okay.
And what it does, it reads, you have every being has a specific energy signature that is your identifying signature. That it's like a fingerprint.
Hmm.
Even when we don't have like a physical form like this, we can still recognize each other on the other side based on that signature.
Yep.
And so the life review pod does the exact same thing. So does the NDE itself is
Mhm.
tailored to each individual person for
Okay.
the same reason.
Okay.
But anyway, so when I got back in the pod, I noticed right away that it was starting out differently, and where I was, I didn't recognize it first.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and once I got into it, I realized I was seeing a previous lifetime.
Mm.
And what I found out later is I've had three Earth-based lifetimes prior to this one. So this is number four.
Okay.
The first one was in Switzerland
Mm.
in the 1700s. I was born like mid to late 1690s, lived till the 1770s, then had an almost immediate turnaround where I was born again in the 1790s, lived into the 1840s. That lifetime was started out in eastern New York State, ended in New York City, and
Mm-hmm.
then the last lifetime was a very short one. I was born in 1900, uh, contracted the Spanish flu virus that hit towards the end of World War One, and died from that at the age of 17 before I turned 18 in 1918.
Wow.
So those are three lifetimes that I had. And I realized that the reason they were showing me all three as I look at them afterwards was because the first lifetime I had was about as perfect a lifetime as you can have, where I followed my plan to the T. I accomplished everything and then some that I set out to accomplish. My wife and I in that lifetime were both natural healers in different aspects, and we kind of combined our strengths
Mm-hmm.
and became healers for that area around in what's called the Zermatt region of Switzerland, which is southwestern where the Matterhorn mountain is. In fact, we could see it from the cabin that we lived in. We could actually see it a few miles away.
That's cool.
It was a beautiful view. I still
Mm-hmm.
it's a place that I actually recreate it whenever I go to the other side. After I've had a life review and I'm able to just kind of go off on my own, I
Mm-hmm.
always end up in this same little place, and it's a
Awesome.
recreation of that place I was in.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, like I said, that lifetime is about as perfect as you can get. And the reason I was showing that is because the second lifetime was the exact opposite. It was as bad as it could get. It was,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't follow my path at all. I completely deviated from it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, I never understood why until just this past year. My guide helped me to understand this. And it was for me, a very life-changing moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason why is because many of us here on Earth are not from here originally.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had three Earth-based lifetimes, but that was not my first lifetime overall. I've
Yeah,
had lifetimes
your
on other
first
planets in
incarnation.
this galaxy, in three other planets in this galaxy, and probably other galaxies before that. But that's all as far as
Mm-hmm.
I know. So it's three. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, when we come from a higher evolution species, like most of them are, to a lower evolution species like humanity, Um, like humanity is very emotion based, where a lot of species are not. They've either evolved away from them or they have a greater control over them. I call it the Spock syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
where they're more logical, they're more fact based. They don't let emotions control their actions.
Yeah.
But with humans, we are very emotionally oriented. And so I wasn't able to handle the level of emotions that I was like when I left the hometown that I grew up in, which was Kingston, New York, in that
I lived
lifetime.
in Kingston when I was
You
little.
really did
I
you?
did, yeah, when I was
Oh,
little.
that is so
Yep.
cool.
Yep, I really did.
Yeah, back then in the 1800s, Kingston was like the retirement community for people from New York City. It was like the place everybody wanted to raise their
Interesting.
families in.
Yeah. It's not
So,
like that now. Or it
no,
wasn't like that
because
when I was a kid. It was a little city. It was kind of scary actually
yeah,
for us.
everything's different now. I mean, you're talking about,
You're talking about the
250 years ago.
1900s or something, right?
Yeah, 1800s, yeah.
1800s. Okay.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
like I was born in, like I said, like the mid 1790s.
Okay.
And so by the time I reached my late teens, it was obvious that I was a math genius, basically.
Mhm.
My
Okay.
father was an ex-banker, had worked for a bank for 25 years in New York City, and his protege, he sent me basically to apprentice with him. That's how they did things back then. You didn't go to college to learn how to become a banker. you apprenticed under one,
Okay.
and learned hands-on, basically,
Yeah.
kind of like a blacksmith would do. You apprentice
Yes.
under another blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
And it became obvious very quickly to everybody around me that I had a lot of ability in the financial markets. And like the New York Stock Exchange was almost brand new. It had just been created, I think, in 1824.
Mm-hmm.
So, or no, even I think maybe a little bit before that, maybe 1822. But anyway, very, like the early part of the 1800s. It was like 2 dozen market people who had basically joined forces and decided to create this stock exchange where people could buy and sell commodities and
Mm-hmm.
uh, stock and companies, things like that. And I had a nose for that right off the bat, even
Mm-hmm.
though it was a newer thing. And so I jumped in, and what I was supposed to do was use my financial abilities to create loans, like home loans for people to buy their first home they could pass down to multiple generations of their family, loans to get them out of financial debt or to pay for their child's college education,
Mm-hmm.
um, loans to go on vacation, whatever they needed to get themselves financially stable or to set up their future, something like that.
Okay.
And what ended up happening was I was very caught up with the overall kind of greed and narcissism and ego that
Mm-hmm.
was very prevalent in that area, like that area around that time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
greed was a very big thing and always has been. Anything involving money is always got greed around it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you something more about that later on. Um, and so, as a being who came from a place where emotions were either very under control or had been evolved away from, I had no defense against this.
Okay.
And so I felt vulnerable to it,
Okay.
and ended up controlling me instead of me controlling it. And so
Okay.
that's why I deviated off my path and
Mm-hmm.
went to hell in a handbasket, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in that lifetime, um, I basically harmed what I did is I created loans that worked well for the bank itself,
Mm-hmm.
but had terms in the small print that people never looked at that would eventually, make the interest rates jump through the roof to where they couldn't afford the payments.
Mm-hmm.
Same with their home loans. People were getting evicted from their homes. Um, families were getting split up.
Mm-hmm.
The wife sometimes would go back to live with her family if she was able to. Some of them ended up moving in with aunts or uncles in other states. But the worst one for me was the kids. The kids, a lot of them ended up on the streets because there was just not the level of care for families that there is now. Even now, it's
Yeah.
not great,
Yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
better than then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to see and feel these kids suffering on the streets, like in the cold in the winter and the heat of the summer, and starving and begging for change, for food, for anything people could give them, um, trying to, huddle under a rat-infested blanket, trying to stay warm.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing it broke me in ways that I cannot to this day describe. I broke down and I was screaming, like, please make this stop. I can't take anymore. And I remember I
So
heard my guide's voice, and he
sorry.
just, said, like, you asked to see this. We can't stop it. You have to see it through.
So you were seeing all the pain that you caused.
Not just seeing it, feeling it, like I
Yeah.
was them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because, like, a life review, I've described it like a lot of people think it's like a movie, like you just rewatch your life. You see it from your perspective too. But what the biggest teaching tool of a life review, the reason why it affects so many people who have one and come back, is because you see and feel everything that you said and did to others from their perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I had to live every one of these children that whose lives I destroyed, every husband and father who had to steal, trying to get food for his family, ended up in prison or in debtor's prison, which was still a thing until 1833 when
Wow.
they were finally outlawed. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just like I think the one that stuck with me the most was this one boy who I swear have you ever seen like pictures or video of like the Auschwitz survivors
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or like those UNICEF ads from the 80s where they show those kids in Africa where their bellies are bloated and they don't even have
Yeah.
enough energy to wipe the flies away from them?
Mm-hmm.
He was like that. He was in that emaciated shape where his face was just gaunt and almost jaundiced.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he was looking, from his perspective, looking in a pane of glass to see his reflection. But the way it looked to me, because I was seeing it from his perspective, it was like he was staring into my soul.
Yeah.
And I think that one broke me more than like, to this day, 40 years later. Every time I close my eyes, I see that kid's face. I see other kids' faces. I see the things that I did to them, the way they made them feel. And more than anything else that I've experienced before, during, or since, that has motivated me to do the exact opposite as much and as often as possible in this lifetime.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But so when uh, basically I ended up being caught, um, smart as I was, groups of people were smarter, and they ended up catching me. Had a really long, extensive trial. My wife divorced me during it, took our kids, and left to, I think, the other coast, basically. She was getting death threats daily from people who recognized her as my wife because it was all over the papers.
Yeah.
And so I was convicted on all counts, which is a lot. I had basically had the book thrown at me. The judge was trying to make an example of me because the financial markets were still kind of a relatively new thing, and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't want to set an example of somebody, being allowed to get away
Get
with
away.
murder,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
So they sent me to Sing Sing, which was a new prison at that time,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it's still in existence today, as far as I know. And so I was in my early 50s when I was convicted and sent to prison. And what ended up happening, there was three guys who who had been sent to prison because of me, who found that I was there, and was working in the prison laundry. That was my job in prison, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they came at me one day with some homemade shivs, knives that they made out of like toothbrushes or something,
Yeah.
and to death, killed me.
Mm-hmm.
And as things generally were back then, people who were prisoners or were considered indigent, in other words, not able, where their families weren't able or willing to pay for their funerals or grave site, they were sent off to a place called Hart Island, which was in the Long Island Sound, and had a place called Potter's Field, which is a um, kind of a tourist spot now. But then it was the place for it was like a lot of unmarked graves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went from, being a math genius, being on top of the world where I had so much, I had been embezzling money from the bank that I was working for on top of, stealing from people. And so I had like this two-story brownstone in the Upper East Side, which then is like the Upper West Side is now, the opulent area for the rich people.
Mm-hmm.
And I also rented an apartment in the Greenwich Village area where I hosted parties for the people that because I did a lot of favors for politicians, business people
Of
who
course.
all knew.
Shadiest of the shady. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, I was as shady as it comes,
Mm-hmm.
and so everybody knew my name who wanted favors done under the table, and so I would host these parties, and that's where people would bring either come if they wanted to get a favor, or they'd bring somebody they knew who wanted a favor.
Yeah.
And so I was their go-to guy. And so like my family was constantly going on big vacations. We went to the Caribbean, we went to France. We had an interest in a winery, things like that. So I
So
mean, we were
basically
well off.
lived off the backs of ruining people's lives. Yeah.
Exactly. I
Okay.
mean, if I lived off my actual salary, we
Mm-hmm.
would have lived okay, but it wouldn't have been like it was. And that's part of how I
Yeah.
was caught,
Yeah.
was living way beyond my means.
Of course. Yeah.
So, but I went from the like that height of greed and narcissism and everybody knows your name. It's like Cheers on crack,
Mm-hmm.
to being in an unmarked grave on this little island in the middle of Long Island Sound and nobody knows your name.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who you are, where you are. Like I don't even know where I'm buried now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was the most humbling experience to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Um, so when I came back to the other side after that lifetime, my first thought was, I need to fix this. Something, like things went way wrong, and my first thought was, well, I'll just end my life early. And so when I immediately went right back, um, to Earth, and had that shortened lifetime where I chose to get Spanish flu and die young.
Mm,
But when I came back to the other side from that lifetime, nothing had changed. In fact, if anything, it had gotten 10 times worse.
mm-hmm.
So I was desperate at that point, and there's an area on the other side that a lot of times people who see it will mistake it for hell. The
Mm-hmm.
people who describe hell a lot of times are describing this area, but it's not. The hell that church teaches is
Mm-hmm.
not real. It
Yeah,
doesn't exist.
I believe that too.
So this area is an area where beings choose to put themselves, and it's either ones who think they deserve to be punished for things that they did, or alternatively think that they don't deserve the light and love that is everywhere on the other side. Because
Yeah.
I mean, the being that created everything, source, God, whatever you choose to call that being, and a piece of that love that makes us this being, the unconditional love that is absolute, is embedded into everything that
Mm-hmm.
this being created. Everything from the smallest blade of grass to the biggest galaxy. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Everything has this same spark of love in it. That's why we can do this. Why we can love each other if we choose to. But we also have free will, and that's how we can screw things up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I went to my guide first,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me, "Don't do that." Yeah, basically, in more words,
Yeah.
and um, he basically made it very clear that the reason why what I had been doing wasn't working is because he said you're not thinking about the people that you harmed. You're
Yeah.
thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, I want to end my pain. I want to make
Yes.
myself feel better. And
Yeah.
as long as you're thinking selfishly, your plans are not going to work.
Yeah.
He said you have to live it differently. And I asked him, what do I need to do? He said you need to live what's called a path of atonement.
Mm.
And he explained what that is. It's basically you choose to live a life that has the equivalent level of pain and suffering to what you caused in your previous life. And sometimes it takes multiple lifetimes, depending on how much you caused. Like someone like Hitler, for
Yeah.
instance, would
Yeah.
probably have multiple lifetimes of atonement.
Mm.
Um, but for me, it was thankfully just this life.
Mm.
But so all the pain that I've been going through, I planned this life deliberately to include pain and suffering,
Mm.
to to live this path of atonement so that I could make up for what I did in that previous lifetime. And
Mm.
that was the why that I was missing.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
once I learned that and came back, like it changed everything about how I saw myself, the world, my place in it, what I was meant to do with my life.
Mm.
And like my past started at 14. Like everything
Mhm.
before that was just preamble.
Yeah.
It started at 14 and it went from there. And I mean, it changed everything about everything I've done since.
That's interesting because I don't think I've ever looked at it that way. I've come to the conclusion that I took on a really incredibly hard life so that I could help a lot of people.
Mhm.
Because if I didn't come from a place of suffering in this lifetime myself, I couldn't meet them where they're at to bring them through their suffering. And so, I mean, who knows, what the truth is of that, but that's what
Well,
feels true to
it's
me,
one of the
you
reasons
know.
people do that. There's sometimes it's to learn certain lessons, like how, what it feels like to, because experiencing disability or pain or suffering is an experience in itself, even though we consider it a bad experience or a negative
Oh,
experience,
I don't
it's still an
think, yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I
And so
think
people do
all
that sometimes just
experience
for
is
the
valid.
experience of itself.
Yeah,
Other people do it because, like you, they want to reach people in a place that they are, and so they
yeah,
need to be able to exist on and understand that level. And for
yeah,
other people, it's like me, where they're atoning for something they did in a previous lifetime.
yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons to go through that.
Every time I've asked, I've always gotten the answer that you chose this, and I'm like, okay, but what else? Like, tell me why would I choose this? Because I wouldn't choose this, you know? like
You know,
that,
you wouldn't consciously in
and
this body, but you did before
yes,
you
but
came.
my higher self would.
Yeah.
And so I needed more than that. I needed more than them saying you chose this. And so then finally, at some point they started kind of explaining bits and pieces, and it was like you chose this because you had to do the work that you're meant to do. And you
Right.
knew that you didn't need that. And that makes total sense to me because I remember sitting in my darkest moments knowing that I chose it and that I chose it for a reason that was going to matter. And it is now. And now I see it all because now I, do the work that I couldn't do if I had not had this really rough life, leading up to it.
Yeah.
So
Like,
anyway,
yeah,
I
because it
love,
creates sympathy, empathy, and compassion. To
yes.
go through suffering and especially at that level, you
Yeah.
either become you follow one of two paths basically.
Yeah.
Either you become the hurt people that hurt people, misery loves company type, or you become like you and I were sympathy, empathy, and compassion for other beings, and it's a
Yeah.
path of helping others.
Which I believe, was a choice as well. Which I mean,
Hmm.
not believe, I know was a choice as well. I had to, at some point, decide, am I going to hate the world because of what it's done to me, or am I going to rise above this and use this as a badge that I walk with that helps me? Like I
Yeah,
went through all
like
of
I
this.
survived this.
I
This is my
survived.
purple
Yes.
heart.
Yes.
You
This
know.
is my like proof that I'm able to, do good in the world. And so it was like that was a hard choice because it was much easier to hate everyone.
Oh yeah. So
And I spent a lot of
it's
time
like
that way
it's like
early.
I always think of it like
Mhm.
I call it the Yoda speech where where like when someone I think it was Luke or somebody that asked is the dark side stronger? And it said no, it's easier, quicker, more seductive.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
that's always stuck with me, that
Hmm.
speech, because the whole light side, dark side in those movies was a metaphor for love versus hate.
Hmm.
How hate is so much easier to do. How
It is.
looking down on people and choosing the lowest common denominator. That's the easy path. You
Yes.
have to work to choose the other path. It takes effort to follow that
And
other path.
and it takes a lot of times it takes effort over and over again. Like it's
Hmm.
it's not
It's an
like
everyday
I
thing.
make the decision. It's like I make the decision and then I'm faced with another thing and I make the decision again and I make the decision again and it's like,
Well, sometimes making the
you
decision,
know,
it's more like saying, okay, making this decision comes with these obstacles that are in my way, and I have to
yeah.
choose to face each obstacle and overcome it in order to stay on that path.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
like a what do you call this races where the hurdles. You
Hmm.
have a hurdle to get over,
Yeah, yeah.
another hurdle, but
Yeah.
in order to win the race, you've got to jump over those hurdles.
And you could just give up and walk away and be like,
Yeah,
all right, I'm
or just
done.
fall. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
But in order
Yeah.
to really to, but the most satisfying accomplishment, the most satisfying ending is knowing you faced all of your obstacles, all of your challenges, all of your all the things that got in your way, and you made it to you stayed on your path and you accomplished what you set out to do.
Yeah.
That I mean
Yeah.
that is an amazing feeling, and
Well,
I
well,
felt it a few times.
yeah. My guides have told me, a few times now, they're like, you don't have to do it. You don't have to. Like, it's all up to you. You can do it or
Mhm.
not do it. But if you don't do it, you're gonna come back and try again because you've done that before. So,
Yeah.
like, they're like, you might as well just do it because you keep saying you're going to. Like,
Yeah, well, and also it's just it's not just like well, if you do it once, then you're done.
no,
It's it's a
different
constant
level.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you what you're doing with every I tell people that think of it like as this analogy where every lifetime that you live is like a moment in each lifetime where everything that you do in each moment, every choice, every decision that you make in every moment, like I'm going to go this way or I'm going to go that way. I'm going to treat people with respect and dignity, or I'm going to treat them like crap. I'm going to smile or I'm going to frown. Every
Mhm.
little choice that you make along the way determines what kind of person you become in that lifetime. But at the same time, what you do in each lifetime determines what kind of being you become overall.
Hmm. That
So
makes
it's the
sense.
same
Yeah.
way, same analogy. Like moments
Mhm.
to a lifetime are the same as lifetimes to overall life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. when you were 7 years old, okay, you're out of your body, you're in the room, you see the doctors and nurses working on you. Okay, what happens next?
Okay, so like I said, I heard my guide's voice when I was starting to panic, and
Hmm.
his voice was very calming, and basically he communicated to me that you are dying, but you're okay, which I thought was a strange way of putting it at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Like, how am I okay and dead at the same time? It doesn't make sense. But he
yeah,
said, you're in a place where you cannot be hurt anymore.
yeah.
And he said you don't feel pain, you don't, uh, but you'll be okay. You don't have to worry.
Hmm.
And it's just the way he said it and this voice, the combination really just calmed me down to the point
Hmm.
where I can start to notice details again. Where
Yeah,
when I'm in panic mode, it's like I have that tunnel vision.
of course.
And
Yeah.
so, I started to notice things again. And eventually what he said was, there are things that we need to show you. And he said, you need to come with us. And as soon as he said, you need to come with us, I felt my ethereal form, or whatever you want to call it, go through the ceiling, through the roof. And I mean, I could literally see it going by me,
Mhm.
like little, like the pieces of wood and stone, whatever. I was like going through them, like someone phasing through them,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
came out of the top of the hospital.
Hmm.
And